Northeast tribal leaders Kanbra, India Sorgarge, free movement regime suspend Kurubule Guado, reconsider Kurubule urge Kurishe Friday din. 16 February, Hotel Acacia, Dimapur, Nagaland, Manipur, Assam, Aro Mizorambra, alag tribal leaders, civil society organization, Ahigina, Taikanlaga Chinda Padishe, Northeast India Symposium on Indo-Myanmar border titled Reconsidering FMR Removal and Border Issue, Loigina. It was symposium do Nagaland Indigenous Peoples Forum, Bra, organized Kurishe.
Today, we are unique in the history of Nagaland Indigenous People Forum. We are all here for a certain cause for our indigenous people. To the Prime Minister of India, subject opposition to the scrapping of free movement regime and proposed border fencing along the Indo-Myanmar boundary. Sir, the sudden decision to end the free movement regime and construct border fencing across the Indo-Myanmar international boundary is a big disappointment to the people of Northeast. The drawing border lines in our land by historical forces without our consent divided us into different sovereign nation states. This adversely impacted our people who habitually move across this geographical space to carry on their traditional way of life and livelihood since time immemorial. The security argument of your government has used to justify the removal of FMR stands in contradiction of the diplomatic and strategic outreach with the neighboring countries, and more importantly, it violates the indigenous rights of border communities. We strongly oppose the security-centric approach to the border management. We urge upon your good office to explore our measures to urgently address the present concerns of the indigenous people, to consolidate the efforts towards building peace and amity that is so vital for all round human and economic development in this strategically sensitive border region. The collective voice and aspirations of communities living in the Northeast region should not be ignored. On our part, we will not fail in our call of duty to help restore peace and harmony among the indigenous communities in the Northeast region.
As we are all aware, the indigenous people of the area had never been taken into consideration during the creation of this boundary. We have nothing to do with it. We have never given our consent or agreement in the creation of this boundary. So this boundary is just a remnant of imperialism that divides our people to this day. So the establishment of a free movement regime in 2018 by the BJP government under the Act East policy was regarded as a benevolent gesture to the indigenous communities of the area. Not only does it promote cross-border trade, but respect the rights of the indigenous people to interact socially and culturally, even if they are politically separated. The FMR not only facilitated the free movement of individuals within the 16 kilometers on both sides of the boundary, but also fostered the bond of relationship essential for preserving our ethnicity. So both the government on either side of the boundary, that is the Indian government and the Myanmar government, at least had to give this to us. But the central government decision to withdraw the FMR has come as a shocker to all of us. It's quite dismaying why the BJP government is acting against its own policy. It seems the whole gamut is an appeasement policy towards the Meitei community of Manipur Valley. No wonder the Biren Singh-led state government in Manipur lauded the central government's decision. This decision of the government to suspend the FMR and construct 1,600 kilometers along the Indo-Myanmar border is a direct affront to the rights of all the indigenous tribes settling on both sides of the border. Therefore, the Kuki-NP Manipur, the apex civil organization representing the Kuki community, expressed profound dismay at the decision taken by the central government to enter the free movement regime and its plan of building fencing along the border. Respected leaders, that we tribals, we the stakeholders should unite and fight against this.
We don't cross the borders. The borders cross us. On the basis of UN Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous People, Article number 36, sub number 1 and 2. Here, we the indigenous people are allowed to show our love with our neighbors. So there is no border. I should say, I said this one because when this very article, number 1 to 46, was passed, the UN top leaders said that now the indigenous people have a home in the UN. And when this article was passed, even India have voted in support of this UNDRIP, September 13, 2007. So why should today's government of India ignore all these articles? So this is a big question. And as a Zoe Unification Organization, we send a complaint letter to the UN Secretary General. Also, Union Home Minister, Government of India, on the 5th of January 2024. And on that very day, we have issued a press release that we mind this. We don't want this. Removal of everything we know. Fencing, everything we know. Naga brothers, do your assembly house pass a resolution in support of UNDRIP? Mizoram State Assembly, during Zoram Thanga's ministry, also Lalthanhola ministry, they passed a private resolution in support of this UNDRIP 2 times. Why should they pass a resolution for 2 times? For the first time, to have a resolution on it, and for the second time, to press the central government harder. So today I appeal Naga brothers, please go for lobby among your elected MLAs so that your assembly house will pass a resolution in support of this UNDRIP.
The Nagas are Indians by circumstance, not by choice. To begin with, that international boundary had been set up without any cognizance or any reference or any consultation with the northeastern tribal people that are living in the border areas. They know it. They never accepted us as human beings that needs to be consulted ought to be treated as equals, and that every time they enter into an agreement, if they don't like it, they throw it into the dustbin unilaterally without the consent, despite the fact that it's a formal agreement. How many times are our tribal people in the Northeast going to be trampled all the time, at any time that the government of India wants, insulting us every step of the way as if we are not a human being to be respected?
This forum also should pressure to the government that at least they should consider on a humanitarian ground, because after all, we are all human beings, and after all, we are all same citizens. We cannot simply divide away our people. Of course, now in reality, we have made the Nagas into two groups. Why? Because it is not by the British government, but our Indian people have divided two groups: that side, Burma side, and the Nagaland side, or Mizoram side, or Manipur side, which has weakened us. That the small portion will fight with the Indian government, the other small portion will fight with military Chanda down there in Burma. So that is the policy we have. Please, our Naga leaders, wake up. You may be in the politics, you may be in this organization. Wake up, and I think we have to put our head together and to push together, fight together, so that our people are not divided, our boundaries are not destroyed, and our original land should not be destroyed. Thereby, we will come to know that Nagas also will have a same feeling. Northeast people also will have a same feeling, as we always say that the indigenous people, when we are divided.
I want to tell all my friends here, I think we should not panic about this issue, because the entire Nagas, Chin, Mizo, Kukis, Arunachal Nagas, they are all against this scrapping of FMR. We must know that. And also, though I am no more in the cabinet, the latest cabinet meeting also, they have decided to go against this scrapping of FMR. And as a legislator, I'm also trying to speak to some few friends, those who has been affected, to speak in the assembly. So one suggestion and one way forward is, we can pass a resolution here going against the FMR, and also requesting the government of the day to take up this issue in the assembly and pass a resolution to this effect. Because our assembly is coming up on 26th February, which may last, say, 1 week or more, because it's going to be a full budget. And there, we also have Article 371A protecting us. So I think we need not panic on this issue. The only thing I'm skeptical about is when it comes to security measures and borders, this entirely lies in the union list. And they have every right to do anything, to take any decision. But the good side of the story is, the positive side is, we have Article 371A protecting us, and in the assembly, we can protect our rights. That is what I feel.
I'll just elaborate on a couple of points. The first is the historical point. The fact is that there was never any border between a cross-border line ever. They were first introduced by the British after the Treaty of Yandabu, and really with some variations, that is what has continued until independent India. And even the British, and subsequently the Burmese government and the Indian government, recognized that it was futile and in fact dangerous. It would invite trouble to try and create a hard frontier between India and Burma at that time. And all governments until now have let that continue. And that has a logical consequence. through a lot of cross-border tribal populations, indigenous populations of the region, they accepted that border, even if they didn't actually accept it, as many have spoken about an imaginary line. They accepted that border so long the FMR continued. So if today that FMR is lifted and we have a border fence erected between, kindred communities on both sides of the border, there is a grave risk that that entire line will be questioned from both sides. And there will be territorial claims that will be made from the Indian side or from the tribal side to that side and vice versa. So that's a very important point, and it's a risk that we are taking if we pursue this particular line of course of action. The second point is, these lines and these borders, what was there before? The fact is today people talk about NRC 1951, NRC 1961, or whatever you may say along a particular line. The reality is that it's the line that is artificial. Historically, people from these areas have always migrated. Every single community in the Northeast has its origins somewhere other than those who are truly originally autochthonous and indigenous. So the problem is with the line. Historically, people have moved. And today you can't suddenly say that this line is a kind of axiomatic reality that nobody can transgress or violate. But along with that, the whole question comes, why? I think people raise this question about why bring in this measure right away. And I'd like to make 2 points there. The first is it's very clear that there is a link to the Manipur crisis. And in effect, the interests of one state or one state government representing one ethnicity has been prioritized over all the other tribal communities of the Northeast. And all this has been done without the minimal consultation. So in many ways, it is purely anti-tribal and anti-democratic and should be opposed on that very simple ground. But there's a second thing. Actually, if you see, and I'm very grateful for the representative of Naga Rising to point out some of the unofficial nature of what has been imposed. But if you see the statements that have come out, actually no reason has been given for the lifting of the FMR and the imposition of border fencing. And we are left to guess why this is. Again, I have addressed this in my article, but the point is that they are all linked to, so to say, illegal activities or insurgent movements and so on, either security or illegal activities. The presumption is that somehow all this is being done by the tribals on both sides of the border. So there's a kind of inherent criminalization of the tribal peoples that is implicit in such a decision and therefore should be opposed on that ground. And finally, there are several points that I could make, but let me point out one thing. If you actually talk to people in the Ministry of Home Affairs, they will try to say, no, this is not anti-tribal, this is just, regulation. And after all, there is regulation between boundaries all over the world, including Europe, which has the freest movement possible. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know how many of you know that in 2015, India switched from the border trade arrangement that had been around for years to the MFN, that is most favored nation kind of treatment in our trade with Burma. And in 2018, we installed an integrated check post at Moreh. In 2019, actually it was the Prime Minister who inaugurated it. Incidentally, the 2000 bilateral agreement that you referred to, if you see the press release and the explanation for it, it's all about enabling movement. And today, 4 years later, you impose measures that in fact disable all that movement. So I was telling you about the ICP and the fact that we switched from border trade to most favored nation trade. But having done that, We have an immigration office there, but till today we do not have a customs office. So if regulation is the real reason why you want to introduce this, in order to soft pedal all the other issues, then the first simple thing is, why not have a customs office that can regulate all the illegal trade or enforce it? So there is a looping hole, gaping hole out there in the simple fact that you've moved from one system of trade to another system of trade, but you haven't introduced the mechanisms that are meant to govern it. As a result of which, that has become a magnet for informal trade in permissible items, as well as a gap that is being exploited for all kinds of illegal trade. And finally, and I think this is a very important point, about the linkage with the Manipur problem. So far we are treating the Manipur problem as a problem between Meiteis and Kukis, or Kuki-Zo, Mar, Zomi people. And in a way, especially other communities in the Northeast have a lot of sympathy for one side or the other side, but they have kept a hands-off distance. Now you see that if you keep a hands-off distance, one day the fire is going to come to your house. And what this announcement of FMR and fencing has done is to show that the fire in Manipur is now reaching all the states of the Northeast. And therefore, it is time for the Northeast to realize that these measures are designed against all the tribes, cross-border tribes, and in fact unite and join hands and oppose it as vigorously as it's possible, knowing full well that we still don't know the real intentions, whether it is just an electoral ploy or whether it is competing notions. The Manipur Chief Minister wants something, but the Home Ministry wants something else. After all, the Home Minister talked about impenetrable borders. And if you look at India today now, we have virtually a visa border with Afghanistan. We have a visa border and fencing with Pakistan. We have virtually no cross-border movement with China. We have a border fence with Bangladesh. And finally, now we are going to have a 1,600 kilometer border fence with Myanmar, which, as Mr. Jamil pointed out, is physically impossible and ruinously expensive to try to implement. And even if it is done, it will be implemented partially, and it will be targeted against one community or the other that they wish to target at that particular point of time. So I think in all these grounds, it is something that we should be aware of the games that the governments are playing and prepare ourselves accordingly.